Cleveland, what's good? This feels amazing to do this for my city, bring it home. This is a dream come true.
If these ropes wasn't 7'2", you would have went through the ropes. I landed the power punches.
If you get the tattoo, I love Jake Paul, let's run it back.
Bet. Let's go.
Less than 4 months after their first fight, Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley are indeed running it back. After Tommy Fury was forced to withdraw due to injury, it was Woodley who answered the call for the rematch.
Mr. Tyron Woodley, we called him up. We were like, hey, you want to take the fight? He has been training. He goes, sure, I'll take the fight. Let's do the rematch, run it back. I'm giving him $500,000 extra if he can knock me out.
So what has changed since the first time they squared off in Cleveland this summer? Woodley did indeed get the tattoo on his left middle finger, which may or may not have helped him secure the rematch. But he's acutely aware that his second loss to Paul would severely lessen his ability to get big fights going forward. One thing Woodley can carry is the supreme confidence going into this one, knowing he had Paul on the ropes in round 4 of the first fight and possibly could have finished him with a little bit more aggression. Now for Paul, the former Disney star and YouTuber, beating a former UFC champion like Woodley was a major feather in his cap, having only trained in boxing for 3 years. And love him or hate him, Jake Paul is one of the biggest draws in the sport already. But this time around, he'll come in as a heavy favorite. And what comes with that are higher expectations. If the problem child can get by Woodley once again, he'll have no shortage of high-profile options in the near future. Will Jake move to a perfect 5-0, or can Woodley put him away this time around?
Here we are, back at it.
We're in for a wild night in Tampa, only on Showtime pay-per-view.
Let's get it on! Again, for the second time in 4 months, YouTube superstar Jake Paul and former UFC champion Tyron Woodley will meet at the center of a professional boxing ring. Back in August, Paul claimed a split decision over Woodley, adding some validity to that unbeaten boxing record. But the problem child sees it as unfinished business. His goal Saturday night, stop the former MMA star, and Woodley's mission is the same, despite taking the fight on just 2 weeks' notice after Paul's original opponent, Tommy Fury, backed out due to lingering COVID effects. All right, let's get it out to our Tampa 2 co-hosts of the award-winning Morning Combat podcast, Brian Campbell and Luke Thomas, always with a front row to fighting history, no matter how strange it may be. Fellas, before we get into the matchup, BC, give us a sense of the moment building around Amalie Arena here on Saturday. Has Tampa embraced this event?
They really have, and it's a non-traditional event, so you have to expect a non-traditional crowd. There's plenty of influencers here. It almost looks like a prom night to some degree. You're seeing a younger clientele coming in, but overall, they like this action. They're expecting action in this rematch, and they've embraced both Jake Paul and this circus that it brings to the overall fight game. Look, in some ways, this event is what it is, but you do have two hungry fighters who know each other well, who went 8 competitive-ish rounds some 3.5 months ago, and they're going to do it for a second time, whether Luke Thomas likes it or not.
Yeah, I was going to say, I walked upstairs just a minute ago to get some food. Some of the women were shoeless and some of the dudes were shirtless. It's going to be a potentially rowdy crowd here this evening in Tampa. Well, you know, it's kind of funny. We were there in Cleveland for the first Jake Paul fight, and you walked around, you got a similar sense that, you know, they were kind of fight fans. They certainly were a great crowd, but they weren't like maybe the traditional profile. Upstairs, same kind of thing. Not exactly the traditional profile of a fight fan, but they seem like they're pretty rowdy. He's right. Tampa has embraced it. Could be a good crowd tonight.
Ringside perhaps looking more like the Explore page of your Instagram, but tonight scheduled as an 8-rounder cruiserweight bout with both of these fighters looking to end it well before that final bell, guys. Woodley, he's got a $500,000 side bet with Paul if he does knock him out. Paul looking to further validate what he did in August. Luke, do you expect a less technical, not that the first one was all that technical in the first place, but a more free-wielding fight this go around?
Certainly possible, and especially if somebody gets hurt, it might really devolve pretty quickly from there. It's an interesting one because the first time around, it's like with both of these guys, Jake was clearly better and had more well-rounded skills, but both of them are such novices that the other one can take advantage of their many shortcomings, even if all not so much intentionally. They could even luck their way into it. You just never really know when the bottom is going to drop out. There's a ton of pressure on Tyron Woodley to do a little bit more than he did last time. There's pressure on Jake Paul to potentially, you just beat this guy 4 months ago. Let's kind of get this over with as well. He's claimed to show he's going to have new skills and new technique. And when you are that young, you can pick up stuff fight to fight pretty quickly. So I think it will be a little bit more high-paced, but there could also be moments where Tyron Woodley retreats to being defensive again, and now Jake has to create openings. That's very hard for a novice fighter to do. So a lot of ways it could go, probably more action, but we'll see.
I just believe that there's no excuses here. No excuses for both of them. They both, I think, maybe took their opponent a little bit lightly the first time around, but also exited that fight thinking if they had done just a little bit more, maybe they could have either had a win in Woodley's case or a much more clear win in Paul's case. So I think you're going to have to look at that 15-year age gap between them. Can Jake Paul continue to use his height and his reach and that youth advantage to right the wrong if that's the lane you're going from what he didn't do the first time around, which is, again, leave no doubt, maybe even finish Woodley. And if you're Woodley, this has become a theme of the second half of his combat sports career, particularly the way he exited UFC, not maybe a failure to launch, not throwing enough, not letting it go. He was the one, Tyron Woodley, who landed the bigger punches in the first meeting, had Jake Paul staggering into the ropes in round 4. It is going to be up to him to make this a fight in just a few hours from now here in Tampa.
Well, if this is in fact a circus, you got to give credit where credit's due. Jake Paul does take his role of ringleader quite seriously. Every time he steps into the ring, seems to add something to his game, sharpen one of his tools. BC, where would you like to see improvement on the Paul side here in his 5th professional fight?
He's a better boxer than maybe he should be, or maybe you would think he would be, being that, again, he's just 24. He's only been, had the gloves on for 3 years now, but he's obviously taking it very seriously for him to have this type of impact on the business where, yes, he's staying in his own lane. He's fighting ex-NBA, ex-YouTubers, everything but ex-boxers, right? Although Tommy Fury, let's give him credit, he was trying to go in a different direction, but he's been better, younger, stronger than them. I like that he has decent boxing fundamentals and a foundation. I would like him, though, to be able to leave that and get more focused on getting a finish when it dictates it, when the opening is there in a fight. This is an interesting rematch because, Tyron Woodley's kind of doing them a solid to keep the show on, going, to keep the date, so to speak. If you're Jake Paul, I think you want to not only leave no doubt from what happened the first time around, you want to do it as early as you can and get the guy out of there. Why? Because even though Tyron Woodley's age 39, he's got much more experience in the wars, taking and giving at this level than a Jake Paul. So, Jake Paul, I love the way you box. I want to see the way you finish, though, tonight. That's the onus that's going to be on him.
I'll add a few things there, if I may. I would say you can point to clear changes that a guy like Jake Paul could make that are actually pretty doable, even with 4 months apart, to picking up boxing late in your life. Number one, I would actually say moving to his right. If you look at the first fight, he cannot generate any offense unless he moves to his left. That will open up a lot more for him. I would also say putting Tyron Woodley on the back foot. He let Tyron Woodley do a lot of coming to him last time, and that kind of slowed the fight down. You could pick up the pace if you can push him on his heels a little bit. And I would also say, lastly, combination punching. In the first part of that fight, Jake Paul, maybe one of the better things he does, actually, is some combination punching. He got away from it in the second half and was content to wait till Tyron came at him and then jab his way around the backside of the ring. I think this time, taking a little bit more authority, a little bit more of an ownership, grabbing the fight by the scruff of the neck might do wonders for him. We'll see if he can.
Yeah, we're not sure how beautiful the sweet science will be on this given night, but it's going to be fun to watch it all play out. Before I let you guys go, we got to put a pick to it here. Some of that YouTube money coming in on the Paul side as he's ballooned to a minus 240 favorite. BC, you smiled first, so you pick first.
Look, the same things I loved about Jake Paul's chances coming into the first fight, it just didn't play out that way. Younger by 15 years, bigger, longer, might even be a bigger puncher, all things considered. If you're Jake Paul, you don't give Tyron Woodley a chance to be dangerous. I think he'll show improvements in this one. I think he'll put it on Tyron Woodley. And once it gets into a war, once it gets off script and moves from boxing match to a fight, obviously, it's anyone's game right there, but I'm going to go with all those intangible qualities and advantages that Jake Paul holds over an aging Woodley. Give me a Paul knockout. Give me a triumphant announcement of who could be next, who he's targeting next. Maybe you, Luke Thomas.
Yeah, doubt it. But I would say this for Jake Paul. I like his chances. I like his chances via stoppage. You can put that as my official prediction. I mean, listen, here's the reality about the first fight with Tyron Woodley. It wasn't that close. Tyron had that one nice moment. Maybe he should have been credited with a knockdown. But short of that, you could give almost any other round to Jake Paul. I thought he won that one pretty cleanly. Why is that going to change in 4 months, especially for Tyron Woodley, who is older, granted not by a lot, 4 months, but was in the middle of filming a television show. He told us that directly. It's just hard to see exactly what he can do differently. Plus, he's had those long-standing issues that BC indicated about a lack of volume. This is Jake Paul's fight to lose. The question is whether or not he can actually, as I mentioned before, really step on the gas a little bit, take authority and control, and get a stoppage inside the distance.
Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell, always game to embrace the weird. Gentlemen, fantastic stuff as always. Thank you. Oh, and there's plenty of great stuff coming your way from those two gentlemen. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell, each and every day bring you all the latest in the world of fight. Download and subscribe to The Morning Combat, the premier podcast, an award-winning podcast. Anywhere they're ringing a bell, keeping a clock, and punches are being thrown, these guys got you covered. Download, subscribe, and enjoy The Morning Combat.